Some RPGs have everything: great combat, amazing world building, unforgettable music, and still end up collecting dust on store shelves. In today's video, we're digging up 5 incredible RPGs that totally flopped in sales. These are the ones that deserve the spotlight, but never got it. And trust me, at least one of these will leave you wondering how the hell you missed it. Back in the early 2000s, Monolith Soft dropped something big. Xenosaga Episode 1 was ambitious, cinematic, and bursting with complex ideas that most games wouldn't even touch. The story dives deep into philosophy, religion, and artificial intelligence, building a futuristic universe packed with political drama and heavy existential questions. It felt more like an anime or a movie than a traditional game. And that was exactly the point. You play as Shianuzuki, a scientist working on an advanced android called Cosmos. But things quickly spiral out of control when ancient alien artifacts called Zohar show up, and humanity's survival suddenly hinges on uncovering truths buried in deep space. The combat system mixes classic turn-based gameplay with a few clever twists that keep things from feeling stale. Each character gets their own set of actions and special attacks. But what makes it interesting is the boost mechanic, which lets you interrupt the normal turn order to take an extra action. That opens the door for some real strategy, like landing a finisher before the enemy even moves. And then you've got the option to call in giant mechs, which look cool as hell but aren't always the best choice depending on the fight. When you're inside a mech, your basic attacks hit harder and you get access to special equipment. But the downside is that they rely on limited fuel and can't use healing items. If you run out of energy mid-fight, you're forced to eject, and that leaves you wide open. They're great for quick bursts of power or against certain enemies, but in longer battles, staying on foot often gives you more flexibility and better survivability. One thing that really set Xenosaga apart, whether you loved it or hated it, was the amount of cutscenes. This game didn't just have story moments, it had full-blown cinematic segments that sometimes ran over 20 minutes long. The pacing could feel slow if you were expecting non-stop action, but for anyone who was into deep storytelling, it was a dream. Xenosaga Episode 1 had everything going for it on paper. A big budget, a bold vision, and a publisher that believed it could be the next big thing. Namco reportedly invested around $9 million into its development, which was a lot for a JRPG at the time. And they expected to sell over 500,000 copies only in Japan, and close to 1 million worldwide. But despite the hype, the game only sold around 450,000 units in Japan, and roughly 850,000 globally. Not exactly a disaster, but definitely below expectations for a project of this size. That shortfall ended up cutting the series down from a planned 6 episodes to just 3, leaving a lot of storylines hanging. Released on the PS2 back in the early 2000s, Shadow Hearts got buried under bigger names like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. But here's the thing. Shadow Hearts had something those games didn't. It mixed gothic horror with alt history, wrapped in a storyline that was way darker and weirder than anything else at the time. The game follows Yuri, a guy who can fuse with demons, traveling across a cursed version of China and Europe on a mission to stop an evil cult. Sounds wild, right? But it works. The tone shifts from disturbing to straight-up bizarre without ever losing its identity. One moment you're fighting twisted monsters pulled from folklore, the next you're dealing with a talking doll that wants to punch God. It's unpredictable in the best way. Gameplay-wise, it ditched the usual turn-based formula and brought in the Judgment Ring, a spinning dial that makes you time your attacks with precision. And if you messed up, tough luck. You'd feel it. Also, every character has a sanity meter that slowly drains during battle. And when it hits 0, they snap and start attacking randomly or doing weird stuff you can't control. Yuri's fusion system is where things get really wild. Instead of just learning spells or skills like a regular RPG character, he absorbs the souls of defeated monsters and uses that energy to unlock powerful demon forms. Each fusion has its own element, stats, and abilities, and choosing the right one can totally change how a battle plays out. But unlocking new forms isn't automatic. You've got to earn them by diving into the graveyard, a creepy realm inside Yuri's mind. That's where he faces the spirits tied to each fusion, one-on-one. With all these bold ideas, you'd think Shadow Hearts would have made some serious noise in the RPG scene. But financially, it didn't hit the mark. The game sold just over 250,000 copies worldwide, which was way below what the team had hoped for. It's hard to say the exact production cost, but estimates place it around $2 to $3 million. Pretty modest by today's standards, but still a big investment back then. Expectations were higher, especially with mid-tier RPGs gaining traction on the PS2 at the time. Sadly, it just didn't get the exposure it needed, and that limited release in the West didn't help either.
Lived in harmony among the Fae, in a world awakened to new magic.
First released back in 2012, Kingdoms of Amalur had all the pieces in place to become a massive RPG hit. It was created by a dream team: Ken Ralston, the lead designer of Elder Scrolls 3 and 4, R.A. Salvatore, the legendary fantasy author, and Todd McFarlane, the comic book artist behind Spawn. The ambition was off the charts, and on paper, it looked like the next big franchise. The story kicks off with your character literally coming back from the dead. You wake up in a pile of corpses, brought back to life by a mysterious device called the Well of Souls. From there, you discover that you're the only being in the world who isn't bound by fate. But what really set it apart was the combat. You could chain combos with different weapons, mix in magic mid-fight, and switch styles on the fly. Chakrams would slice through groups of enemies with flashy spins, Feyblades hit fast and up close, and hammers landed with weight behind every blow. Dodging and countering actually mattered, and it made every fight feel intense and satisfying, even when you were just clearing out bandits or wolves on the road. And once you filled a special meter during combat, you could trigger a cinematic finisher that slowed down time and let you unleash a brutal takedown with a massive XP bonus at the end. Kingdoms of Amalur also gave you complete freedom to build your character however you wanted. Instead of locking you into a single class, the game lets you build your own playstyle by investing points across 3 different skill trees: Might, Finesse, and Sorcery. And as you level up, you unlock destinies that act like flexible class titles, giving you bonuses based on how you've been spending your points. The crafting systems are just as deep. You can forge your own weapons and armor, brew potions, and socket powerful gems into gear to create some seriously broken combinations. Despite all of that, it didn't sell anywhere near what was expected. The game ended up selling around 1.2 million copies in its first 90 days, which might sound decent, but it was way below what the team needed. The total cost of development and marketing passed $60 million, and the expectation was that it needed to sell over 3 million just to break even. That gap between ambition and reality hit hard, especially because the game was meant to be the launchpad for a whole universe, including an MMO that never saw the light of day. All that pressure, mixed with bad management behind the scenes, pushed 38 studios into bankruptcy just a few months after launch. They left behind over $100 million in debt, and the state of Rhode Island, which had backed the studio financially, got caught in a huge legal and political mess. Years later, THQ Nordic bought the rights and gave the game a second chance with a remaster in 2020 called Re-Reckoning. And in 2021, they even released a brand new expansion called Fatesworn, adding fresh story content nearly a decade after the original release. Real quick, if you're liking the video so far, drop a comment and let me know what you'd like to see in the next part. This is actually part 2 of the series, so I've left the full playlist down in the description and also in the card at the end. Comments seriously help with the algorithm and keep the channel going with fresh content. Plus, I check and reply to every single one. And don't forget to help the channel by subscribing and checking out the deals in our instant gaming link. Any purchase you make after clicking it helps keep things running around here. So thanks for the support. Resonance of Fate launched in that weird window right after Final Fantasy XIII, and honestly, it got buried. But here's the thing. This game was doing stuff that no one else was even attempting at the time. It threw out the rulebook when it came to turn-based combat and built something totally wild around gunplay, movement, and a deep risk-reward system that still feels unique today. The whole system revolves around something called hero actions. You spend resources to make a character dash in a straight line while unloading bullets in slow motion, flipping through the air and pulling off these ridiculous acrobatic shots. The real strategy comes from how you position your team. Each movement charges up something called resonance points, which let you pull off team-based super moves if you plan it right. Enemies have layered defenses too, so you need to break armor with one type of weapon, then finish the job with another. And the upgrade system is just as over-the-top as the combat. Instead of collecting new weapons all the time, you take the few you have and mod the hell out of them. You can slap on scopes, barrels, grips, magazines, sometimes 5 or 6 parts stacked onto a single gun until it looks more like a piece of industrial machinery than something you'd actually fire. It's completely ridiculous, and that's what makes it fun. The only problem is the game teaches you how to play in the worst way possible. The tutorial dumps a ton of info all at once, barely explains how anything works, and somehow makes an awesome combat system feel like homework. So do yourself a favor. Before jumping in, look up a beginner's guide. The game reported a production cost of around $10 million. Sega had decent hopes for it, aiming to ride the RPG hype wave of that era. But things didn't go as planned. The game ended up selling just over 200,000 copies worldwide, way below what it needed to break even. It later got a 4K remaster in 2018 for PS4 and PC, which helped a bit, but didn't make a huge impact. Steam numbers show around 35 to 60,000 owners. And when you add the remaster's performance across platforms, total sales probably sit somewhere around 300 to 350,000 copies. Between the niche mechanics, bad timing, and poor marketing, it got lost in the shuffle.
The dominance, the power we wield, it wears.
Final Fantasy XVI is one of those games that had all the right pieces to become a blockbuster. Massive budget, huge marketing push, and the weight of an iconic franchise behind it. But even with all that, it didn't hit the numbers Square Enix was hoping for. They ditched the traditional party system and turned it into a full-on character action game. More Devil May Cry than Final Fantasy. Clive's combat style is fast, stylish, and heavily focused on timing. You've got light and heavy attacks, aerial combos, perfect dodges, and parries that slow down time when nailed just right. What really sets it apart is the way you can equip and swap between multiple icon loadouts mid-fight. Each one changes your abilities entirely, giving you flashy finishers, mobility skills, and attacks that feel completely different from each other. And the boss battles take that combat system to another level. These fights aren't just tough. They're massive cinematic set pieces that mix traditional brawls with epic, almost godlike showdowns. Some feel like straight-up anime fights, complete with explosive transformations and heavy moments where you're trading blows with creatures the size of buildings. Visually, it's stunning. The world of Valisthea is dark, grounded, and full of tension, and the music? One of the best soundtracks ever. At launch, Final Fantasy XVI sold about 3 million copies in its first week. And by early 2025, that number reached around 3.5 million. It sounds decent, but Square Enix expected a lot more, especially for a mainline title. Reports about the budget are all over the place. Some sources mention around $90 million when you include development and marketing. Others go way higher, with estimates ranging from 300 to even 700 million, though those top numbers are probably exaggerated. What we do know for sure is that Square Enix confirmed the game did pay for itself, but still fell short of the sales targets they were aiming for. The PC version dropped with modest numbers on Steam. Estimates suggest around 500,000 to 1 million copies sold total, which isn't terrible but not earth-shattering either. The Xbox Shadow drop was a different story. Analytics firm Alinea put sales at just 22,000 copies early on. But despite that rough launch and minimal marketing, The game climbed to the number 3 top paid spot on the Xbox Store during its release week, and today it sits around number 27 to 30 in the US top paid charts. But even with that recovery, it's clear that the strategy of timed exclusivity, especially locking the game to one platform for so long, has been hurting the franchise's reach more than helping. Alright, before you go, just a heads up that the playlist link should be popping up on screen right about now. This was the second video in the series, so if you missed the first one or want to see what's next, it's all there. And hey, don't forget to help your buddy Sage by subscribing to the channel, dropping a comment on each video, and checking out the deals over at Instant Gaming. Every little click helps keep the lights on and the uploads coming. Appreciate you.